Hi, I'm J. Lenora Bressler, and welcome to the September 23rd, 2021 edition of the Bible Delight in the Details. For the second day in a row, we find ourselves in chapter 1, verse 1 of the book of Philippians, a letter from Paul while in prison in Rome to the church at Philippi. Now, in the ancient world, when you sent a letter, unlike the way modern letters are generally formatted, the signature came at the beginning. You had to know who was sending the letter. And this is because letters were done on scrolls of parchment. And so you wanted to see who this letter was from so that you knew in what context to take all of the things that this person was going to say to you. So not just in the letter to the church at Philippi, but in all of the letters by Paul, you see the same format. He's going to say, this is from me and or maybe a colleague. But almost always, in all of his letters, Paul describes himself as a slave of Jesus Christ. Now, it's very important that we understand why that distinction and why that nomination of his was so important to him. Why did he say it over and over? I'm a slave. I'm a slave. Well, in the ancient world, there were a lot of slaves. And by the way, that rarely had to do with race or national origin as such. It was more often simply that a defeated people in war became the slaves of the victor in the war. Now, in the Greek language, which is the original language of the New Testament, in Greek, there are a variety of terms for slaves in the ancient world. And most of them emphasize the skills or the function of the individual. I'll give you an example. Many of the Roman families had Greek slaves who were very highly skilled in teaching, and they were to teach the children of the household. That term for a well-trained slave who teaches children had its own term. And you see that in a variety of professions, industries, and skills. The emphasis was not so much on the nature of them being a slave as it was calling attention to the particular and unique skills that person had and therefore was going to use on behalf of their master. But that is not the term that Paul uses repeatedly. He uses a Greek term that does not connote any particular skill at all. In fact, it is simply, it was generally used in commonplace to mean a very uneducated, unskilled, untrained kind of worker. And yet we know that Paul himself was highly educated, was a great communicator, and had many skills and training. Yet, this is what he called himself repeatedly. Why is that? I think he's trying to call attention to the fact that all of us, when we become followers of Christ, we do give our will to the Lord. We say, thy will be done, just as Christ himself said in the Garden of Gethsemane. In that way, we do become like a slave. And how God is going to use each and every one of us is actually secondary. We need to be ready to do whatever the Lord calls us to do. Are some of us gifted, and will some of us become more skillful because the Lord directs our education and our training? Absolutely. But what is more important is not what your job description for the kingdom is going to be, but that you are working for the kingdom. So, in your service to the Lord, hold your job description of the moment very lightly in the palm of your hand. Always open, knowing that the Lord may call you to do other things that you are equally good at, or maybe things you're not really good at all. And so you're going to have to use God's Spirit completely and rely on Him absolutely in order to accomplish anything. And sometimes that is just the point. I'm J. Lenore Bressler. Visit me on the next edition of the Bible. Delight in the details. Have a great day.